your happiness in life matters more than anything else. And I know that sounds super, super cliche and cheesy, but it's true. There's no point working if you're not happy doing what you're doing, because you're at some point, not because it's like, oh, love what you do and you have to, and the love for your business. No, there are times I hate my business, right? Like, but you have to like what you're doing, in the sense that if you're unhappy, you're just going to give up eventually.
Came up from the bottom to the top. And the young is gonna never stop. And he always punching in the clock.
I graduated university believing I wanted to become a lawyer. That's kind of what I wanted to do. I graduated in poli-sci. I actually got accepted to law school a year before graduating, and decided to decline because I hated school. And I just wanted to defer I guess I wanted to defer that disappointment I was about to give my parents, because my parents are very professionally oriented. I wanted to defer that disappointment as long as possible. So I'm like, hey, look, I got accepted to law school a year early. Let's go out to dinner and celebrate. So we all went out for dinner to celebrate. And then my mother's like, great, so you're going to go. I'm like, oh, no, I'm not going. And she's like, so what are we celebrating? I'm like, well, I got into law school. You said get into law school. I got into law school. Let's celebrate, and we'll take it from there. And I said, and I used the excuse of I wanted to graduate university first, because if I didn't decide I like law school, then I had to go back and finish my graduate. I had to go reapply. I had to go do everything. I was like, let me just finish school and I'll apply again. Ended up applying again. And got in, and then through different loopholes, I guess, in the system, I didn't end up going. And I decided I was going to take a job. I had no clue what I wanted to do. I interned the summer before for an entertainment management company. They're managers for a couple of celebrities in Hollywood. They ended up moving their offices from Montreal to Los Angeles because that's where all their clients lived. And the partner asked me to go with him, and I said no, because I was a young, arrogant, cocky, I guess early 20s, early 20s kid who thought life owed him everything, and why would I move and uproot my entire life to be an assistant, right? Like how audacious, like the audacity for him to want to groom me, to work under him. And then I found out that, by the way, in the entertainment biz, to become an assistant for the partner is actually like a 5-year plan for most people. Like they have to go to the mail room and then go a bunch of things. When people found out that I was actually gonna be groomed by the partner, they're like, you could have gone, you could have saved 10 years in the entertainment biz, and you would have been way ahead of most people. I'm like, yeah, well, maybe I made that mistake. But in any case, I came home not knowing what to do. And a friend of the family ran a recruitment firm for senior level finance and accounting people. And I took a job there doing sales. Never done sales before. Again, I'm a poli-sci graduate. I thought I'd go into politics. I thought I'd be a lawyer. They look really good on TV, awful profession in real life, from my friends who are lawyers. But yeah, I want to be the TV lawyer. I think that's where my dream, there was a disconnect. I want to be the lawyers like on TV, and those don't really exist, or they exist when they're like 70 and put in 4,000 hour a week work. And that just wasn't me. So I took a sales job doing recruitment. My job was to find businesses who wanted to hire senior level finance and hire us as the recruitment firm in order to find them. And again, not a good job to give this arrogant, cocky, for no reason, blind arrogance. And I'm going to be the first to admit this. I've done nothing with my life to deserve the arrogance that I was putting forward. But I was sitting there making calls, and I watched my bosses not make calls themselves, and it didn't sit well with me. Didn't sit well that I was going in, and if the boss complained sales were bad, my attitude was, if you think that we're doing such a bad job at sales, pick up the phone and show us how it's done, and let's have a competition. And that's just the way my mind worked. And did that for a little bit. saw we had this leaderboard up in the office of like what deals were closed, who closed them, how much the deals were worth, and then they gave us our paychecks. And I'd look at the paycheck, I'd look at what the board said, I'd look at the paycheck, and I'm like, this sucks. This is the worst job I've ever had. And apparently that's almost every job is kind of like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm not meant to work for other people. I hated it in school. I hated authority in school. And I think I'm an entrepreneur, which was a really weird realization for me because I don't have entrepreneurs in the family. Um, Professional oriented. My father's a doctor. Yeah, it was really just, this is what you're supposed to do with your life. If you want to make a living, you have to be a professional. And that's the only way to guarantee yourself any source of revenue. And yeah, so I quit my job, and I had a dream. And my dream was I made this t-shirt for the local hockey team. I'm Canadian, so hockey is really, really big here. And I made this t-shirt, and it caught on, and everyone loved it. And I had this big store. It was a massive store, almost like huge, huge, huge. And it was a one-stop sports store, like a one-stop shop for all sports, for the real fans, right? Like the shirts weren't like boring. They were filled with strong sayings. And that was my dream. And I was like, cool, I'm going to do that. And I turned that dream shirt into an actual shirt, and said I was going to start a t-shirt brand, which again, going back to tell your parents you're quitting your job to start a t-shirt company when they already didn't like the fact that you didn't go to school to take a sales job. You can imagine their reaction on that one was like, all right, good luck. Best of luck with you with that. But I'm going to preface everything by saying that my parents always knew I marched to the beat of my own drum. It's something that for the longest time, that's what I've done. And they may not have liked a lot of my decisions, and they probably still don't like a lot of my decisions, but they had to respect it. I was getting to an age where, they can't, like, I'm not living in their house anymore. They have to trust that I'm making the right decision. And, they saw that no matter what they would try to tell me anyways, I'm unshakable. When my gut tells me to do something, it's unshakable. My wife finds that a problem too. Like when my mind's made up, there's no change in my mind. And yeah, so I said I'm going to start a t-shirt company. Lost a lot of money, right? Because apparently it's not just as easy as I'm going to quit my job and start a business, right? There's moving parts to it. But I was very, very lucky in the sense that on Twitter, which was the big platform back then, because Facebook ads didn't really exist, Instagram didn't exist yet. On Twitter, there was a guy named Damon John, who was on Shark Tank, who wrote a book. And in his book, he said, I like helping young entrepreneurs, right? I like when they reach out to me, and I like helping young entrepreneurs. So I tweeted him, I'm a young entrepreneur. How do I get your help? And he said, damonjohn.com, which I thought was the most blow off answer, because I was like, yes, he responded. And I went to the website, and there's actually zero contact information there. So I'm like, I was so happy that he responded. So I said, that's great. I just went to your website. It's not there. No response, and then I would start retweeting his stuff. I'd start posting pictures from his book on Twitter. And then I tweeted again saying, here's the highlighted part where you say you like helping young entrepreneurs. How do I get help? And he goes, damonjohn.com. And I said, there's no contact information. After annoying him for quite some time, I ended up finding out who his assistant was. We got on the phone. Damon would agree to meet me if I flew to New York. I flew to New York. That was a no-brainer. And I had an hour meeting with Damon John, who gave me probably the best advice I've ever gotten in my entrepreneurial journey, is that when you start your entrepreneurial journey, you're naive, right? You have a dream. You have a dream that I'm going to build this $1 billion business, this $1 million business. I dream bigger. Whatever dream you have right now, by the way, is too small, right? Like if you're going to dream that you're going to start a $1 million business, dream you're going to start a $1 billion business, because the work that it's going to take to get to $1 billion will probably take you to multiple millions. So just dream a step bigger. So I had this. So I sat with him, and I'm like, here's my idea. And Maybe I'm naive. And I remember the exact wording. I'm like, maybe I'm naive, but I think I could turn this into a $1 billion business. And he smiled. And I said, you don't believe me? He goes, no, what I love about what you just said is that you think you're naive. He goes, what happens is entrepreneurs have a dream and then they get beat down, right? He says, you're going to take this dream and you're going to call stores, you're going to call places, whatever you're going to do to try to sell your t-shirts, you're going to do. And you're going to get hit with a lot of no's. I don't think you understand how badly you're about to get punched in the face. It's like you're like the boxer walking to the ring right now, and you're going to take a beating. He goes, but can you get back up? And he goes, and the ones that hold on to that naive feeling, that dream, those are the ones who get back up, and those make it. Because majority of people start a business, they have that naive, they have that dream, they have that passion, and then they get knocked down and they're like, man, this isn't worth it. I give up. I give up. And success happens right when you get back up. Maybe not the first time you get back up. Maybe you'll get beat down again. But if you get back up, that's where success lives. And that's why 9 out of 10 businesses fail, because most people don't have the stomach to get back up. Most people can't deal with the pain or the struggle or the knock to their ego in order to get back up. And that was the best advice, because what happened was I started the clothing company and no one wanted my stuff. And that's a big blow. But if I believed in it and I pushed and pushed and pushed, and then I finally got people taking it on. I did things the right way. It also helped that Damon John took a liking to me and met with me once a quarter, and is still a good friend today, to this day. I owe a lot to him. I promise that every time I'd ever bring him up, whether it's an interview or whether it's a mastermind talk, I'd always give credit to him and thank him, because I owe a lot to him. Started the t-shirt company. Things were going well, but then I saw where retail was going, right? I would sell my stuff into stores. And by the way, I promise this may sound like a long-winded story. I'm wrapping up soon, and I'm going to get into question and answers, because I think that's where the most value is. But you asked me for my story, and I don't even know where to differentiate what part of the story is good, what part's not. So I'll let you decide. But if I'm boring any of you, you could just unmute yourself and sit there and say, let's get to question and answers, and I'll just stop. But yeah. So the clothing company was going well, saw where retail was going, when a store started nickel and diming on every single price that I was trying to give them and trying to compare me to other brands. And I'm like, man, this sucks. Another important lesson I learned there was I didn't know how to run a business. Like that's number one. This is my first business. I'm making a ton of mistakes. I'm stumbling on success. And I say that honestly, because I don't think I had a framework to build a successful business. I think I stumbled on it. I think I fell into a lot of the good things that happened to me while making a lot of bad mistakes and not being smart enough to understand which is good, which is bad, and just getting pretty lucky, which happens in business. But yeah, I saw where retail was going, and I hated the clothing business. I hated it because I felt I had to do everything myself. Right? There's a great book by Gene Wickman. I forget what it's called. It's going to bother me, but there's essentially 2 roles in life, right? You're an integrator or a visionary, and every business needs both. The problem is a lot of visionaries want to be integrators, and a lot of integrators think that they're visionaries, and they try to do that, and then they end up destroying their business, or they get burnt out. I'm a visionary person. I hate the day-to-day aspects, but I think I need to be involved in everything. And that's what happened in the clothing business. Got extremely burnt out. But I loved the marketing and branding side of things, right? I loved getting it on celebrities. I loved the idea of, oh, this thing is not scalable, but I know it will lead to this, and putting the pieces together from a marketing standpoint. That just came natural to me. And I learned business, and I read a lot of books, and one day my wife said to me, she goes, "You're miserable." And I owe my wife a lot of credit for this one, because she sat there and said, look, you love helping people build their brands. Because at this point I was taking a lot of consulting offers and having a lot of free lunches with people where they would pick my brain. I would just tell them how to build their business from a marketing side of things. And I loved it. And I would get super excited and passionate about it. My wife's like, I ask you a marketing question, you talk for 6 hours. I ask you a question about the clothing business, you get mad and angry and you're irritable. Figure something out. And I wrote of my first ever blog post. It's actually still up on my website now. Why I'm leaving True Robbery, which was the name of my company. And I actually went away the night I wrote it, where I wouldn't have cell phone reception. And I strategically did that. So I'd place it out there. So my friends and family and everyone that followed me on social media at the time would see it, but couldn't reach me. So I would not know how they're taking it, because I was afraid that if I took this call and someone tried to convince me otherwise, I would change my mind. But I put this out there, and then the best thing is when you just turn off and you don't check, you don't see what other people are saying. And I wrote it, and it was essentially that your happiness in life matters more than anything else. And I know that sounds super, super cliche and cheesy, but it's true. There's no point working if you're not happy doing what you're doing, because you're at some point, not because it's like, oh, love what you do and you have to, and the love for your business. No, there are times I hate my business, right? Like, but you have to like what you're doing, in the sense that if you're unhappy, you're just going to give up eventually, right? You're just going to stop, and you won't deal with things as well as you're dealing with them right now. And it's doing a disservice to yourself, to your own health, your own business. And I said, your happiness matters. And because of that, I decided I'm going to start something new. And I decided to start a Facebook ad agency. I've been playing around with Facebook ads for a bit. I decided that's what I was going to do. Again, go back, have a conversation with your parents, sit there and say, well, now I'm leaving this business. And they're like, what? And this is just like when you like, this is the woman, my mother, who said, you're going to make a living selling clothing. Like, and now she's upset that I'm walking away from the clothing business. So there's no pleasing anyone in this story. And I said, yeah, I'm going to walk away with it. And she's like, what are you going to do? I'm like, I'm going to do advertising. She goes, what do you know about advertising? I'm like, well, built this business and I'm going to do it. And my first client we took on, they were doing $2,500 a month in sales. They're a small mom and pop, working out of the basement of their parents' house, and grew them to $300,000 a month in sales in under 11 months, all profitably. And that became my lighthouse, which I'm so thankful for, because if that client would have been a disaster and I would have failed, and the results weren't there, probably wouldn't be on this call right now. I'd probably be back trying to work in the recruitment field, because actually that's probably not true. I would have found something, but that kind of led to an introduction and a case study where I was featured, led to another client where we took from $90,000 a month to $250,000 a month in under 6 months. And then I became known as the guy who could help scale. And now I run an agency. I run a paid program where we literally teach. So, I mean, 3 ways that we work with people now is Run My Ads, which is the agency, Done With You, which is my group coaching program, and private consulting. And that's what I do now. So again, apologize for this long-winded 21-minute, I'm looking at the time, 21-minute story. But I think it's important for you to understand that I didn't start an agency because I thought it was the cool thing to do. By no means do I consider myself a guru or an expert. I learn every single day. I'm an info junkie. I love learning and getting better and up leveling myself. And yeah, and I've been really, really lucky that I've had a lot of good people around me that took me in the right direction. But I will say the number one thing that I've learned over and over is that your gut already knows the answer of what you want to do. And most of the questions you have, and this is going to be a perfect segue into Q&As, most of the questions you have, you already know the answers to. You just want validation. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But I guarantee you that if you ask the question, what should I do about this? And I turn back to you and say, what do you think you should do about this? You will already have an answer. And either you're seeking people who will validate that answer. And the people who tell you opposite of what you already want to do, you're going to keep searching other people to tell you what you want to hear. So it's either going to be one person's going to tell you what you want to hear, or 10 people are telling you what you're not going to want to hear. And you're just going to reframe that question over and over in front of other people until you get that answer. So most of our questions are validation questions. And again, absolutely nothing wrong with that. And that being said, I'm here to validate anything that you guys want to talk about, or if there's anything else you want to bring up, it'll be my pleasure. I think more value is in Q&As than there is in me telling you my story. So
my question is two parts. First question is, when you mentioned about being down, Damon John mentioned your naivete. Les Brown, who's a friend of mine, he once said that if you can look up, if you get down and you fall down, if you can look up, you can get up. What was your ability to be in naivete for when all that obstacle and adversity was hitting you? What was that it took for you to keep moving forward when you kept hearing all of those no's? That's the first part of my question. The second part of my question is, with technology moving so fast and you own a Facebook agency, how do you feel about Facebook creating your own market share for your product over TikTok? Second part of my question.
Great questions. All right. So first question, by the way, I love that Les Brown quote, by the way. I know it well. Les Brown's supposed to come on the podcast. In case you guys don't know, I actually run a podcast called Perfectly Mentored, where I've interviewed some of the biggest names on the planet, like Gary Vaynerchuk, Grant Cardone, Rebecca Minkoff, Randy Zuckerberg. Yeah. So again, I'm a serial learner. So a lot of what I do, I learn from them. But yeah, what was it? I mean, I want to be real, right? Like I don't think there was a driving force in me that was sitting there saying, this is the product everyone needs, right? Like, I think I'm solving world problems. Like my belief in this is so bigger than their no, right? Like I need to keep getting up and putting it out there. It was a t-shirt, right? Like there was no mission behind it. It was just a t-shirt. I was a capitalist. I wasn't trying to, there was no tie to a nonprofit. I wasn't changing anything in here. So I think it was just, I'm going to be super, super vulnerable and real. I just flew home from London, and on the plane, I decided to make a list of every single person that ever ripped me off. You know, that's a weird thing to do. It's almost sociopath type of thing to do, but I made a list of like every single thing, girls that have said no to me, you know, just everything I could think of, teachers that told me I would never amount to anything, just anything I could think of. You know, moments in my life where I just felt like people were on me, sports moments, everything. And I think I carry a chip on my shoulder. And I think I maybe if I have to look back at it and try to answer this question, maybe it was hearing my parents say, you're really going to make a living selling t-shirts. I wanted to prove them wrong more than prove them right. And I think I had this chip on my shoulder with almost everything I do, like, and that's not always a good thing, by the way, because I lost a lot of money, you know, trying to do things because someone told me that wasn't the way to do it. Right. Like, and I'm like, oh yeah, you say it's not the way to do it. I'll watch this. I'll show you it's the way to do it. It's like, I'm the guy who literally got headaches every day because I didn't want to wear my glasses because I thought glasses were the doctor's way of telling you can't see. I'm like, oh yeah, you're telling me I can't see? I'll prove to you that I could see. I just don't like people telling me I can't do something. And in the early days, there were a lot of people who didn't believe in what I was doing. You know, I don't know where you're at, Marlon, or where a lot of the listeners are at in terms of their journey, but your friends and family are the worst people to listen to when it comes to business in the beginning. And not because they're bad or they hate you. You may have some friends or even some family members who are jealous and they don't want you to succeed. You may have some friends that you going out on your own and doing something makes them uncomfortable because they should be doing something and they feel like you're doing something positive, and it makes them feel like they're stagnant, and that's a problem. Or you may just have good friends that love and care about you and don't want to see you fail. And you're going to counter a bunch of these people along your journey. Your friends and family are the last people to come around, but the first people that when you have success to tell everyone that they believed in you, right? They're the first people to come there and knock on your door and be like, man, I knew it. I knew you'd amount to something great. I knew you would do all this. So that's why I don't really ask, even when I had t-shirt designs and I would show a friend and like, I love it, man. I'd love it. I'd wear this. I'm like, cool. It's $29. But I don't get one for free. I'm like, if you love it so much, I'll give it to you for 50% off. And when they wouldn't buy it, I realized it was an ugly design and no one wanted it, right? Like you're not willing to pay for it. You're not a good test. Like people will sit there and say, my mom, my friends, all my friends and my mom think that this is the best idea on the planet. Probably not the best test market, right? So I think to really answer your question, I think it was stubbornness. And I think every entrepreneur needs that a little bit. I think every person needs that little bit of that edge inside them, that dark place inside them, because the no's do sting. And the journey of an entrepreneur is incredibly lonely. And that's why like you guys are in the right place in a mastermind, in a group of fellow people who you guys could talk to, because most people won't get what you're doing. And most people won't understand, the fact that your brain doesn't turn off as an owner. There's no clock in, clock out. There's no 9 to 5. You lie awake at 2 a.m. staring at the ceiling, wondering what you're going to do next. It's all on you. That's an incredible burden, at times. So I think it was just pure stubbornness, and you're going to need to go there in dark and find things that will drive you. Be like, who's this idiot that didn't believe in me, and who am I going to pinpoint? Who am I going to think of today in order to go out and do it? So that's the answer to the first part. Because again, there was no mission behind it of being like, no, everyone needs this. I'm saving the planet. The second
Facebook
part
over TikTok. Yeah. Facebook over TikTok.
Yeah, I got it. Look, I think Facebook's the best advertising platform on the planet, hands down, regardless of what's going on. I actually just came home and last night I watched a 60-minute interview of what went on with the whistleblower. And I actually watched the full interview. Look, I think there's a lot of problems going on with Facebook right now, and I'm aware of it. We don't just do Facebook ads. So I'm going to preface that we now do TikTok, Snap, email. We're all in. One of the things I coach on, and why I started the coaching program, was pretty much based off that question. People think they're going to grow a business and they're going to go all in on something. That's not the way you grow a business. You don't go all in on one thing to grow a business, right? If you're a guy and you want your best chance of getting a girl, you don't go all in on the first girl you see. That's almost impossible. Those numbers don't add up, right? But if you focus on the 5 core areas of business, right, and you get incrementally better in each one, you have what's called a compounding effect. So if you know finance, compound interest, if you make a little bit of money, reinvest it. And by the way, it compounds. Einstein called compounding the 8th wonder of the world. Warren Buffett credits all his success to compounding. But it's the same exact way in business. You don't have to quadruple everything. But if you got 10% better in everything, if 10% more people know you exist, if you could convert, if your conversion rate on your website, if let's say you run an e-commerce store, could get 10% better, if you could increase your pricing by 10%, if you could get your customers to buy from you 10% more than they already do, well, you could 60x your business. And if you doubled all those 5 areas, you actually 32x your business. So you could 6x your business by doing around 10%, getting 10% better in the 5 areas. And you could 32x your business if you actually doubled all those key areas. And that's what people don't realize. And I run an agency, and I think, agency world, a lot of agencies are going to have a big problem soon, because they don't do a better job educating their clients on this. They don't do a good enough job educating their clients that, cool, we're running Facebook ads, but you're looking at the wrong thing, my friend. This is just one tool in the toolbox. Can't build a house with just a hammer.
Out of the time that you spent working with Damon John, are there any lessons in particular that really stick out in the forefront of your mind that you learned during that time that you still apply today? If so, what are they?
I mean, the one he gave me from that first meeting, the stay naive, is probably the one that hits me the most. It's hard to pin. A lot of our relationship was watching what he was doing. And I would say a lot of the people I have on the podcast, you actually can learn a lot more by watching them, what they do, versus asking them questions. Like if you just took a step back and said, how are you handling things? And just watched and observed and looked at and understood that almost everything they do is deliberate, right? There's a mindset and a deliberation. I mean, everything's thought out. So, I mean, I can't pinpoint like the one, every time I think of Damon John, I think of that first meeting, right? That's the one that stood out. There's probably a million other things he gave me advice on, but probably it was a lot of it contextual, because we actually would have meetings about my business and talk about things within my business of what was going on. But that one, I don't think there's one that comes close to that. And maybe if I thought about it a bit longer, I would, but I'd maybe think of something. But yeah, nothing comes close to that one.
When you were scaling that mom and pop's business to $300,000 a month, what skills and things were you focused on to bring them to that level? That's part one. Part two is you said you were an information junkie, and I'm kind of wondering on what types of information do you spend most of your time in indulging in to make yourself more productive?
I'll answer part two first, because I think it's important. Do not do what I do, right? Like don't make the mistake I did. I've literally bought every course on the planet, every program on the planet. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on information, right? Like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's not a made up number. Like I know, because I did the math recently on how much I spent, and I haven't finished any of those courses. And I haven't finished any of those things because we already know what we should be doing. It goes down to the validation. I want to see what that person is doing. Why? You already know what you're doing is working. What do you care what that person's doing? Oh, well, I need to learn how to do this. Cool. Are you going to finish this, or is there something else for your brain? I should really make almost like an AA for this and be like, hi, I'm Jason, and I need to know everything. Right. And that's a big problem. Like I do, like I'll go down rabbit holes on things because someone will sit there and say, did you know why airplanes fly like at altitude? And I'm like, no, man, but that's a really good thing. I should spend 3.5 hours figuring that out. And I'll start looking it up. I'll start watching YouTube videos of why airplanes have to fly at a certain altitude, blah, blah. And I'll be like, what are the buttons that they need to do? What are pilots doing when it's on autopilot? And I'll literally go down that rabbit hole and need to learn everything. If I ever played Jeopardy or Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, maybe I'd have a chance, but like, I'm still not that smart because I don't finish all those things. I just need to start the process of thinking I need to know everything. So I would say the best information you could possibly get is trial and error. It's a very expensive way to go about things, or hire a coach or join a mastermind like you're in right now and learn off people who already did that. Take practical knowledge versus buying a course or reading a book of something that worked for someone 7 months ago. So they decide to now write a book about it or launch a course about it, but that's not really what they're working on anymore, right? Because it worked for them. They have tons of evidence on it. So I'll give you a perfect example. I will never buy a Facebook ads course ever. And I would never launch a Facebook ads course. And the reason being is that if you're watching that course, it's already outdated. Because it has to be based off a certain amount of time that I put into practice and I've learned from it and got results from it, that I feel comfortable putting it out there. But guess what? Things like iOS happen, targeting different things disappear. The buttons that I show in the video of what you should be clicking, they move that to the left and the right, or they move it somewhere else, or they get rid of all that. And then you're like, man, this course sucks. So I think if you're going to learn and you really want to learn, read from the greats though, right? Like depends what you want to go from the tried and true, the business people that have, like if I was going to read investing books, Warren Buffett, right? You know, I'm trying to think where all those books, the books I buy are from people who are still relevant today and not from someone who just became relevant, right? They're from people like, I read advertising books, Breakthrough Advertising by Eugene Schwartz, right? Like that's the Bible. Ogilvy on advertising, because the principles exist today. The medium in which they deliver those principles, that's all that changed. So if you can understand the basics, but the mediums change, you're in luck. Financial investing. Warren Buffett's making the same financial investments that he's made, when he first started, and as he is now, and he's still one of the richest men on the planet. So why would I not read his book, but read the guy that made 30 million buying Bitcoin? Cool, but like, I'd rather take the guy who's like 90 and still making money, as he did when he was 30, from 30 to 90, making tons of money by doing the same exact thing every single year. That's what I want to learn. But we all look for the latest hacks, the latest tactics. What's the get rich quick? What's the shortcut? What's all this? What's all that? Every presentation I ever do is the least sexiest presentation. And I always start with it. By the way, this is going to be the most boring presentation, like unsexy presentation. But I guarantee you, if you listen to it, you'll make a ton of money, and that should be sexy. Like, I spoke at an event last month. The event, the title was called "How to Grow a 7-Figure Agency Using Compound Layering." That sounds like an advanced accounting class. It was like, and I thanked everyone in attendance. I was like, thank you for coming to this, because if you read this, you're actually all in on this, because this is the most boring name. This isn't like how to increase your revenue by 450% using this one thing only, right? Like, that's sexy. I don't believe in that. I think you want to go back to a lot of the mistakes I made. It's chasing. And if you find that one thing that makes you that's like strategy, and it works for a bit, you're next chasing the next strategy and the next strategy and next strategy. I don't like that. I'd rather consistent as much as possible, or stability as much as possible. So in terms of information, I read books by the greats. I'm always reading, I'm always learning, but I'm not a good example, Cleveland. I'm not a good example of being like, man, I want to be like Jason and learn. I'd much rather come up here and say I'm a serial implementer. That's way cooler and way better in my mind. That I just implement all the time, but I don't. And I'd be lying to sit there and tell you I do, but it is a regret, right? I think I flip the amount of time I spend learning onto implementing, and the amount of time I spend implementing onto learning, and I'd be a lot better. Question one, which was, remind me again. Sorry.
About
I
the
went on a rant.
The mom and pop's business that you scale.
Yeah. Mom and pop. So what skills? Direct response marketing. You want a skill to learn in life? Learn direct response marketing. Learn how to craft an offer, put that offer in front of people, and get them to give you their credit card. Right? Sales become easy when you can market to the right people. And what was the ultimate way for me to scale? And I'll say this with every single one of our clients, with every single client I have that I've helped grow their business, the number one thing had absolutely nothing to do with me. They had a good product and service. They had something people want. I can't do anything if you don't, right? So that part is the most important part. It makes our job look easy. And a lot of marketers will come out and sit there and say, look what I did for this brand. But if I told you I had a Lamborghini and it's for $10,000, and you knew, liked, and trusted me, you're like, hey man, Jason's telling the truth. He really does have a real Lamborghini. It's not stolen. It's a legit Lamborghini. It's $10,000. I could literally market with zero targeting. I could sit there and say the planet, and I won't even have to write anything in my copy. I would just be like, $10,000 Lamborghini, who wants it? And I would sell out of them because the offer is that strong. But if I sat there and said $45,000, $450,000 1984 beat up Toyota, $485,000, who wants it? I don't care how good you are at marketing. You won't be able to get one person to buy that. It doesn't matter how good you are. So I think that's the most important thing. The skill you need is one, to have something that people want. It's way easier to tap into already existing demand than it is to create demand for something. But if you could do that and you learn direct response marketing, man, you're on fire. If you direct response marketing is is an underrated skill, and that comes with a copywriting, that comes with everything and around it. I think that's the most important thing. In order to, if you could learn how to put a good offer out there in front of the right people, and make it magnetic, and get people to like be attracted to it, that's the most important skill. So I think that was the number one skill. We took something really good, found the right audience for it, crafted a good offer, put it in front of people, and made a lot of money.
I've come across a software called Thrive where you can integrate or sync and link your Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Snapchat, all these onto one platform, so you're not popping in and out of these different apps. Is that also what you provide? Is that something you would recommend?
So I don't know the software. It sounds like an automation software. It sounds like it's just it does those things. We definitely use automation in terms of like email follow-ups and sequences like that. We don't do any automation when it comes to like putting ads up, that it like you post it here, it'll become an ad in all these different places, because I think all the platforms are contextually different.
Right.
So we look at platforms standalone. Otherwise, like if we did do that, I think we'd be very expensive button pushers, and we're not. And so yeah. But I would say I don't know enough about. I don't know that one. Automation's good. It's not the best, but if it's a good tool that actually gets results and gets you to do something and saves you time, I'm all for that. I think done is better than perfect.